We are about to count down 16 dinosaurs that museums still display, even though science says they never truly existed. These range from harmless paperwork slip-ups and species named from a single tooth to branding choices museums refuse to update. Each entry exposes how mistakes, marketing, and millions in merchandise keep fossil fakes on display. Some are understandable errors, some are cold calculations, and the number one spot, that is the biggest LI shaping how you picture dinosaurs. Let us get started with number 16. Ultrasaurus was supposed to be the heavyweight champion of the dinosaur world. In 1985, Jim Jensen announced the discovery only to run straight into a paperwork pileup. It turns out a Korean paleontologist had already used the name Ultrasaurus in 1983. Under the rules, Jensen's dinosaur had to be renamed Ultrasaurus, but the mess did not stop there. The bones were a mix of Supersaurus and Brachiosaur parts, a classic chimera, not a new giant. Museums clung to the Ultrasaurus label for years, milking the biggest claim in books and toy aisles. Your childhood's biggest dinosaur was born from a twipo and some borrowed bones. Trachodon is the dinosaur your elementary school textbook would not stop mentioning. Named in 1856 by Joseph Leidy, it was based on a single lonely tooth dug up in Montana. That's it. One tooth, no skull, no skeleton, just a dental placeholder for every duck-billed dinosaur you could imagine. Later fossil finds showed those teeth could belong to any hadrosaur, but the name Trachodon stuck around for decades, haunting museum labels and plastic toys. Today, it is a textbook case of nomen dubium, too vague to mean anything, but too nostalgic for some museums to let go. Naming a dinosaur from one tooth? Still in print. Seismosaurus stormed onto the scene in 1991, announced by David Gillette as the new record holder for longest dinosaur ever. The headlines loved the name Earthshaker Lizard, and museums rushed to add Seismosaurus to their dinosaur lineups. The fossil was impressive, but the real earthquake came later. By 2004, paleontologists re-examined the bones and found nothing unique, just a very large Diplodocus. The flashy name had already taken root, so museums and books kept Seismosaurus alive for years, because honestly, Earthshaker sells more postcards than another big Diplodocus. If you ever bought a Seismosaurus t-shirt, congratulations. You own a piece of media hype. It turns out the only thing it shook was the marketing department. Anatotitan sounded like the next big thing when it hit the scene in 1990, a giant duck-billed dinosaur with a pancake flat head, perfect for the trading cards and plastic toys that flooded museum gift shops. The name stuck to every oversized hadrosaur skull in North America for 2 decades, building its own minor retail empire. But in 2011, paleontologists Campione and Evans torpedoed the hype. Those Anatotitan skulls turned out to be large, fully grown Edmontosaurus, no special genus, no duck dynasty, just the senior citizen of a species we already knew. Museums did not send out press releases or recall the merch. They quietly swapped labels and let Anatotitan fade away, hoping no one would notice their best-selling duck was just a rebranded Edmontosaurus. If you bought an Anatotitan toy before 2011, congratulations, your collectible is officially extinct. Torosaurus entered the fossil record in 1891, instantly winning fans with its massive frill and dramatic skull openings. For over a century, museums treated it as Triceratops' mysterious cousin, bigger, older, and somehow cooler. Then, in 2010, John Scannella and Jack Horner published a study that sent curators scrambling. Their research showed that Triceratops skulls do not just get larger with age. The frill thins and develops holes, transforming into what we had always called Torosaurus. Bone histology backed it up. Those frill fenestrae only appear in the oldest individuals, but Triceratops is a household name, so museums hedged their bets. Instead of pulling Torosaurus from the halls, they quietly added plaques that read, "Possibly an adult Triceratops." Translation: you paid twice to see the same dinosaur at different ages. Torosaurus is just Triceratops with a senior discount and a fancier hat. Welcome to museum branding, where debate is not bad for business, it is a business model. Nedoceratops, the dinosaur equivalent of a medical mystery show. Named in 1905 from a single battered skull found in Wyoming, it stood out for one thing: a giant lopsided hole in its frill. For decades, museums treated Nedoceratops as a rare genus. But take a closer look at that frill. The bone texture, the jagged margins, the uneven shape all point to a battle scar, not a new species. Most paleontologists now suspect it is just a Triceratops that got gored in the head, lived through it, and healed up in a spectacularly weird way. Still, the Smithsonian keeps the Nedoceratops label front and center, as if one unlucky Triceratops deserves its own Wikipedia page. Naming a whole dinosaur from a single skull with a hole in it, that is how you end up with a museum display about a Triceratops that had a really bad day. Dracorex Hogwartsia sounds like a spell straight out of Harry Potter, and that is no accident. In 2006, the Children's Museum of Indianapolis unveiled this so-called Dragon King of Hogwarts, a flat-headed, spiky-skulled dinosaur named to cash in on wizard mania. Kids lined up for photos, and the gift shop churned out Dracorex plushies faster than you could say Quidditch. Then, in 2009, Jack Horner and Mark Goodwin ran the numbers and the bone scans. Their verdict was simple: Dracorex is a juvenile Pachycephalosaurus, not a separate genus. That dramatic skull was infant anatomy, the features that would have rounded into a classic dome as the animal aged. The museum did not rush to update the signage. After all, Hogwarts Dinosaur moves more tickets than young Pachycephalosaurus. Dracorex is not a real genus. It is what happens when marketing gets a head start on science. Stygimoloch burst onto the scene in 1983, sporting a skull that looked like a medieval weapon, a small dome, wicked spikes, and all the attitude of a rebellious teenager. For decades, museums and movies treated Stygimoloch as the headbutt star of the dinosaur world. Then, in 2009, paleontologists Jack Horner and Mark Goodwin took a closer look at the bone texture and growth patterns. It turns out those spikes and the thinner dome are classic signs of a subadult Pachycephalosaurus. The skull was still growing, and the bone was remodeling fast, textbook teenage phase. But just as the science caught up, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom put Stygimoloch in the spotlight, cementing it as a separate dinosaur in pop culture. Museums kept the name because a headbutt dinosaur sells toys and tickets. Congratulations! You have paid to see a dinosaur's awkward phase, permanently on display. Number 8. Nanotyrannus, the supposed dwarf tyrant that crashed the party in 1988. It promised a pint-sized tyrant, basically a mini T-Rex for anyone who thought the original was too mainstream. The skull looked leaner, with extra teeth and longer arms, and for a while museums loved the idea of a second tyrannosaur to spice up their halls. Then the bone detectives got to work. Thomas Carr's growth studies sliced through the hype, showing that the so-called Nanotyrannus specimens were still actively growing. Bone histology, unfused skull bones, and other growth markers place them in the juvenile and teenage stages of T-Rex. The skeleton known as Jane at the Burpee Museum fits right into that awkward growth stage, not some mysterious cousin. Not everyone is convinced. A handful of holdouts still argue for a valid species. But most experts see Nanotyrannus as a juvenile T-Rex. Museums love the controversy. Why pick a side when you can sell both t-shirt designs? Schrodinger's dinosaur baby T-Rex and separate species at the same time, depending on which plaque brings in more visitors. Manospondylus gigas sounds like a villain from a bad science fiction movie, but in 1892, Edward Cope named a dinosaur from a couple of porous tail vertebrae. 13 years later, in 1905, Henry Fairfield Osborn introduced Tyrannosaurus rex with better fossils and a name that stuck. An instant superstar. Here's the twist. By the rules, Manospondylus had dibs. The International Code of Zoological Nomenclature says the oldest name wins, but only if anyone actually uses it. Manospondylus gathered dust while T-Rex conquered textbooks, movies, and every lunchbox in America. When scientists realized the bones probably belonged to the same animal, Article 23.9 quietly stepped in. If the old name is forgotten and the new one is everywhere, keep the new one. No dramatic trial, no museum panic, just a fine print escape hatch to protect the brand. So T-Rex stayed king, and Manospondylus got demoted to dinosaur trivia. Imagine paying to see Manospondylus gigas. It sounds more like a back problem than the apex predator of your nightmares. Raptorex stormed into the spotlight in 2009, introduced as a pint-sized early Cretaceous tyrant, basically a prototype T-Rex with all the right features, just 60 million years ahead of schedule. The story was irresistible. A fossil from China, complete with tiny arms and a big head, suggesting Tyrannosaur evolution had a jump start. Headlines cheered, museums lined up for the rights, and the fossil market buzzed. Then the paperwork, or lack of it, caught up. The rock matrix did not match the supposed Chinese origin. Detailed analysis in 2013 revealed the fossil came from Mongolia's Nemegt Formation, not the Yixian beds. Worse, it was not a unique species at all. It was a juvenile Tarbosaurus, smuggled out of Mongolia and sold to a private collector. The original paper's premise collapsed, but the correction barely made a ripple. Museums and media had already run with the story. Buy a fossil from a shady dealer, skip the provenance check, and you get a fake dinosaur and a crash course in why science needs receipts. Raptorex, the mini T-Rex that was not, but made for one hell of a headline. Brontosaurus is the dinosaur that refuses to die, no matter what the science says. O.C. Marsh named Apatosaurus in 1877, then doubled down with Brontosaurus excelsus in 1879, both from the same Jurassic bone beds. For decades, museums and pop culture crowned Brontosaurus as the gentle giant of the prehistoric world. Then, in 1903, Elmer Riggs pointed out that Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus were basically twins. Officially, Brontosaurus was demoted to a junior synonym, and the scientific community switched to Apatosaurus. Out in the wild, the name Brontosaurus stomped on. Museums kept their Brontosaurus signs, gift shops kept their plushies, and nobody wanted to break the news to kids clutching their favorite thunder lizard. Then, in 2015, Emmanuel Chop and colleagues used advanced morphometrics and declared that some specimens do differ enough to bring Brontosaurus back from the dead, sort of. Now museums pick whichever name sells more lunchboxes. For over a century, Brontosaurus has survived as a brand, not a species. If you ever bought a Brontosaurus toy, congratulations. You own a piece of taxonomic whiplash. Iguanodon was supposed to prove scientists finally had it figured out. In 1854, London's Crystal Palace unveiled life-sized Iguanodon statues designed by Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins and Richard Owen. They were giant, lumpy beasts with a signature feature, a spike planted squarely on the nose like a rhino horn. That horn was actually the thumb. But nobody knew because the only fossils were a handful of teeth and some scattered bones. The models lumbered around on 4 stumpy legs, looking like reptilian bulldogs, because Owen pictured Iguanodon as a massive quadruped. Then, in the 1870s, the Bernissart skeleton surfaced in Belgium, nearly complete. with the thumb spike in its rightful place and a body built for walking on two legs. The Crystal Palace monsters should have been quietly retired, but they are still on display as historic reconstructions, with barely a hint that they are as accurate as a medieval painting of a unicorn. Millions of people have seen the wrong iguanodon longer than they have seen the real one. In the world of museum dinosaurs, sometimes the lie is literally made of concrete, and you can still buy it on a snow globe. Pachycephalosaurus was supposed to be the star of the dome-headed dinosaurs, famous for that thick, bony skull perfect for headbutting. But if you ever bought a Dracorex plushie or a Stygimoloch action figure, brace yourself. You got scammed 3 times by the same animal. In 2009, Jack Horner and Mark Goodwin put the entire dome head lineup under the microscope. Their CT scans and bone slices showed Dracorex, Stygimoloch, and Pachycephalosaurus were not 3 species, but one animal at different ages. The flat-headed, spiky Dracorex is the baby. Stygimoloch, with the punk rock dome and horns, is the teenager. Only the full-grown dome earns the Pachycephalosaurus name, the adult form. Museums knew by 2010, yet kept all 3 on display, each with its own plaque, toy line, and spot in the gift shop. Why kill 3 revenue streams when you can sell the same dinosaur in baby, teen, and adult sizes? Museums chose the merch. For years, your ticket paid for a growth chart masquerading as a dinosaur family reunion. Museum DLC. Pay 3 times for 1 species. Science fixed the record. Merchandising just hit repeat. Triceratops is the dinosaur every kid wanted on their lunchbox. 3 horns, a massive frill, the tank of the late Cretaceous. But here is the twist. Follow the 2010 research by John Scanella and Jack Horner, and that beloved Triceratops skull in your favorite museum might not be an adult at all. Their bone studies showed Triceratops frills were still solid, still growing even in the biggest specimens. Only the oldest individuals developed the long, windowed frills we have always called Torosaurus. If that is true, the mighty Triceratops is just the teenage phase. Torosaurus is the grown-up. Science says the name Triceratops gets to stay, thanks to naming priority. But the narrative flips. Your hero Dino might just be the kid version of a less famous adult. Museums know this, but they are not about to risk the Triceratops brand. Gift shops are filled with Triceratops hats, plushies, and t-shirts. Imagine the meltdown if every plaque suddenly read, "Actually, this is a juvenile." The stakes are a mascot on the line, and a retail empire built on a possible misidentification. Welcome to the naming debate, museums. Hope you never notice. For over a century, museums and movies have sold us the idea that dinosaurs were giant, scaly reptiles, leathery monsters frozen mid-roar, skin like a crocodile, attitude to match. The truth has been sitting in the fossil record since at least 1996, when Sinosauropteryx was unearthed in Liaoning, China, sporting a halo of filamentous proto-feathers. That was not a one-off. Fossils like Caudipteryx, Microraptor, and Anchiornis followed, each preserving feathers in fine detail, even pigment cells showing color patterns. By the early 2000s, the scientific consensus was clear. Many theropods, including relatives of T-Rex, were feathered, not scaly. Some were downright fluffy. But walk into a flagship museum in the 2020s, and what do you get? A towering, scaly T-Rex glaring down, not a feather in sight. Raptors posed like Jurassic Park extras, all lizard skin, no plumage. The reason is not a secret. Updating a fossil hall costs millions. $44 million for a single renovation at the American Museum of Natural History, over $100 million at the Smithsonian. Remounting centerpiece skeletons means years of construction and lost ticket sales. And then there is the brand. Visitors expect a scaly T-Rex. Try pitching a feathered murder chicken to a board of directors who just spent $10 million on rubber lizard animatronics. The real kicker is museums have known for decades. They have published the papers, hosted the conferences, even built temporary exhibits with scientifically accurate models, then left the main halls untouched. Why? Because the public expects the monsters they grew up with, and the gift shop is stocked with scales, not feathers. Your mental image of dinosaurs, scaly, roaring, tail-dragging, is a Victorian fever dream, propped up by institutional budgets and Hollywood nostalgia. The biggest fake-out is not a single species. It is the entire look. Museums decided you were not ready for the truth, and the cash register agreed. Welcome to the era where the real lost world is accuracy, buried under a pile of plush toys and outdated fiberglass. Across all 16 entries, one truth stands out. Museum dinosaurs aren't just shaped by fossils. They are shaped by economics, branding, and the fear of admitting error. Science moves forward, but institutions cling to what sells. That's why your favorite dinosaur might be less about discovery, more about marketing. The real fossils are honest, the myths are built to last. Which one fooled you longest? Drop your thoughts below.